Okay, let's start. I'm very honored to be able to host this panel on robotics at CMU Summit. So as you can see, we have a very balanced panelists that consists of people from the industry, from academia, and also has also experience in both international in China, US, and internationally. So actually, the first time I know Professor Li's Songshan Lake, the export park is in the 2017. When I attend the Accra conference, I received a iPad, a mini iPad, and then that on the back of the iPad is called Songshan Lake export base. And I took the iPad home. I still use it today because the quality is very well, and it has an extremely long battery usage. So I'm quite curious about this Songshan Lake base still now. So could you tell us how many teams do you have in the Songshan export park right now, and what's going on over there?
Yes, it is a pleasure to attend the panel and also be able to speak with friends back from CMU. I have not been back to CMU for many years. The first time I landed in Pittsburgh was 1979. So more than 30 years ago. And in between, I've been back to the campus a couple of times. I left CMU 1983. Okay. Of course, in the several trips that I went back to CMU, have observed the tremendous transformation of the campus and also the city of Pittsburgh into a high-tech city, primarily by the two universities, CMU and also University of Pittsburgh. Startups and also companies from these two schools are now dominating, the landscape of Pittsburgh. Okay, so I come back to Hong Kong, in 1992, 1 year after the founding of this new school, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. And 7 years probably after I joined HKUST, we began to wonder if we could do something to help also transforming the industry in the Greater Bay Area, starting from our neighbor, Shenzhen City. Mm-hmm. So that was the starting point. And also it was 1999, when all the, events happened in this wonderful place. And of course, we founded together with students from my lab, a couple of companies, including Google Tech and also DJI. And a few years later, 2009, 10 years later, okay, I branched off from Shenzhen to inner part of the Greater Bay Area, Donggua, which has also a nickname in the Hollywood of makers. So we started the export park in an incubator for young students to fulfill their dreams, to build their own startups. Over the last 6 years or so, we have incubated around 60 or so companies. They ranging from, from factory robots for the factories, robots for agriculture, robots for surface in the water, ocean, and also robots at home. A few of them have become probably billion-dollar companies, and they are doing extremely well. So that is a brief update on the status of the Expo Park. And also we are going to have a new campus, which we will move in September or later this fall, and which has around 100,000 square meter space with co-work space, labs, library, and also factory underneath, and also sports facilities and the dormitories. We call the Dream Factory for Robotics. Yeah, thank you.
Great. That's thank you for the detailed introduction. And I have a following question for that, because I got very curious when I prepared for this panel, and I actually went through to check about any news about this Songshan Lake export base. And then I saw you actually have some reports. You called it Songshan Lake Entrepreneur Reports, and I start to read those reports. And I noticed in one of the interviews with yourself in this report in 2017, you mentioned now at that time you have about 50 teams. And then you said, okay, once the number of teams increase to 100, the next DJI will arrive. So I wonder, so with this this select bar, so like how far away from the next DJI?
Actually, as I just mentioned, a few companies actually are on their way to becoming the next DJI in their field. Probably you may read the news about the home robot company Novell, okay, and they are become the #1 company in China for home robots. Especially last year during the Double 11 festival, okay, they sold more than 200 million renminbi in half hour. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they also Hairo is a robot company for logistics automation, and they also becoming a leading figure in the field. And they also EcoFlow, a mobile battery storage company, and they become the #1 selling company in Japan and also in the US market. So I think quite a number of those companies, and also e-propulsion, QKM as well, factory robotics company. So I think many of those are becoming the leaders of their field in China and also globally. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm very happy to see that, and it seems the Songshan Lake export base provide an excellent environment for their growth. So my next question go to Professor Wang. So I know you got your PhD from German, and then you went to Hong Kong, and also you have postdoc at Singapore, and then Harvard, and then come back to Hong Kong, and then become assistant professor. Now you join the SUS Tech at Shenzhen. So I think you have been around, and you see the difference between the Europe, the US, and also the Greater Bay Area. So as Professor Lee mentioned, the Great Bay Area, he also has got inspired in Silicon Valley, the Bay Area in California, and now he started his this park in Greater Bay Area with Shenzhen, Hong Kong, and Dongguan. So what's your feeling about the Greater Bay Area, and what's the major advantage and of these two Bay areas?
Thank you, Dr. Zhao, and good to be here. Actually, I missed out in my CV or short bio that I got my master's in Imperial College London. So I did spend a year in the UK as well. So I don't want the audience to feel that I ran around a little bit too much. So actually, I was never the optimistic type. I went around the world looking for wonderland. And then when you have more things in your hand, you also start to realize that there is no wonderland. So wherever you are, there are opportunities that you can do stuff. You can achieve something. So I think Professor Zhe Xiangli has always been my role model. I went back to Hong Kong U during the time Hong Kong U was investigating seriously into robotics. So I was a little bit of a no one. Then I came back to the Bay Area quite by accident. Then after spending years of my, I think the most fearless time, starting up my group in Hong Kong U, and I started to realize that this soil, this kind of field is really fertile. I mean, in the greater Bay Area, it's by all means similar to the Bay Area in the United States. And we have the very diligent students and also the new institutionally innovative changes happening actively in Shenzhen and in Hong Kong as well. So I do feel that I am lucky and I chose wisely to step my next footsteps. So I went back to Shenzhen and I feel ever happy about it.
Okay, so what's the motivation for your move each time? Is it like just coincidence, or you actually plan that strategically?
When you're younger, you will receive multiple cues, and you choose to answer each of the cues. So you go where the best opportunities are. But when you get older, you choose more wisely. And I think for me, I do field robots a lot. And unfortunately, Hong Kong doesn't have a lot of fields. So I think Shenzhen has what I got. So I went back to Shenzhen as my last step, so I can finally settle, hopefully.
I see. So, yeah, I think that's good to know. And I think I also saw your research is about this bio-robotics, and also all kinds of course, all kinds of robotics, but the bio-robotics is one of the most famous that I can see on your front page. And could you tell us more about this area, and the history, and a little bit history, and also your thinking about the future trend of this area?
Okay, to keep a long story short, I mean the so-called bio-robots for short. So the full name preferably would be bio-inspired robots. I think a lot of hints came from the WIST Institute of Bio-Inspired Engineering in Harvard. I mean, to me, the philosophy goes as the ultimate goal of robots is to serve humans. And before robots are wise enough to fully do that, I think a reasonable middle step would be to replace humans doing the dirty work and the dangerous work. And since a lot of the current know-hows and the workflows are designed and carried out by human beings, it is logical that we develop robots that replace humans directly or indirectly. That means we need to make robots a bit like what humans do. So the dimensions, the way they work, and the tools they are trained to use. And therefore, we are motivated to develop robots that take hints from humans, and they could ideally replace humans altogether more directly. So we brand our lab bio-robotics, but actually we are not studying the human replacing robotic devices, but we are more taking examples and inspirations from biology, and we try to apply those in developing robots. And in particular, I'm interested in soft robots recently because I do feel that these are the hope that we can make cheap, adaptable, safe, and naturally workable new kind of ways to make robots.
Great. Thank you for the answer. So help us to answer more about this soft robotics. So my next question go to Ms. Gu. So I think you're investors, right? So you're founders of the venture capitals. So in your opinion, so that we talk about so Professor Li mentioned many new startups he has incubated, and also a co-chairman, and also Professor Wang mentioned about this bio-robotics. In your opinion, so what will be the new areas in robotics that could be wrapped in the next decade or so? That we will see those new technology that is emerging.
Thank you. Actually, I think it's a very interesting question because robotics is not a very heated topic in China's VC industry until I think last year, and I can see there is a timing difference before 2019 and after. I think the main cause of the rising interest in the robotics area due to the gradual improvement of the technology side, where I think before that, when we talk about robotics, it's more like a sci-fi or a technology that is quite has a quite long way to implement in the real industry. But after that, I think the gradual improvement in certain technologies has made it a real feasible technology, and and also I think one interesting issue rising in industry is the labor cost. Especially from last year, we can see, because of the pandemic and the gradual demographic change in China, we can see in certain industries, the manufacturing owners, they have reached a tipping point where it's more cost efficient or cost effective for them to implement robotics or robotic related product lines in their in their factory than just try to hire more workers or laborers into their factory. So I think there are a lot of interesting opportunities rising, especially I think several sectors will be most interesting. One is the I would say it's the service robotics. For example, like home robotics or robots that can replace, I think, a partial labor of human. It's not it's not a human-like robot, but they can do some they can do some they can do some home job, or they can do just a piece of the service that human can provide. That will be very effective already. And also there will be opportunities in different sectors. For example, in agricultural industry, we can see a lot of auto drive technology they're using in agricultural industry. And also we can see a lot of factories either in fabric or either in furniture industries. They're incurring a lot of labor cost problems in those specific industry, and we can see a lot of implementation of robotics technology or products in those sectors. So yeah, a lot of opportunities coming up.
Okay, great. So I think Ms. Du brought up a very interesting phenomenon that robotics become extremely hot in the last 2 or 3 years. Start to get extremely hot in the last 2 or 3 years. So my 2 cents are, and my own understanding is this. So my research is about the trustworthy AI, artificial intelligence, and particularly how we can apply artificial intelligence or machine learning into safety critical applications. For example, self-driving cars. For example, healthcare like devices, assistant robots at home, like you said. So my observation is this: machine learning and artificial has been there for half a century. Right? So but until up to now, until like recently, we dare to apply them to this safety critical applications, and the impact is huge, right? So I think this is a very interesting phenomenon. I want to have another question to Professor Li, is because I know you wrote the book Non-Holonomic Mechanics, right? So also many years ago, and also you work on the drone control, and now you have the city company. You're chairman of the city company that's work on self-driving cars. So I can also see the trend that we are moving cars or robots closer to our human, right? So we can play with it. The robot can fly, can walk, can swim. We can play with it at home. We can send this to a lot of we can use it to take care of the adult and the cure patient. So I want to ask a technical question to you. So what will be the biggest breakthrough in robotic technology in the last 10 decades that enable this change? You muted, Professor Li.
Okay. From my own personal experience, and also, the perspective from, the area I come from, I accredit this, tremendous transformation to a number of important breakthroughs. The first is due to the smartphone technology. Okay. And because of we have to give a lot of credit to Steve Jobs and also Apple's. Okay. Because the smartphone technology allow us to have chips, sensors, such as accelerometers and all those, which maybe 10 times or 100 times better, smaller, and also 10 times, 100 times cheaper. Okay. And also available for hobbyists and available to people outside the smartphone industry. Okay, so that I think is a important breakthrough. And the second breakthrough is the supply chains, developed to support the smartphone industry and also the consumer electronics industry. And all those supply chains actually coincidentally happened in the Greater Bay Area. And of course, that allow young people to turn their dreams into reality. You probably may recall a startup company by a group of kids from CMU Robotics. Kevin Dowling, the Boston Color Kinetics. I met them many years ago, and they were still a small startup in Boston. And I told Kevin, if you want to, bring down the cost of this beautiful technology into the hands of millions of consumers, you have to come to Shenzhen. So Kevin, took my advice, come to Bao'an, and they found his supplier. And later on, that technology startup become a billion-dollar business, and it was sold to Philips. First went to IPO in the Nasdaq, and they also, sold for $1 billion to Philips. Okay, and I believe now Kevin is starting up a couple of other companies in Pittsburgh. Okay, and he is very familiar, know how to use the supply chains in the Greater Bay Area. So this is, and of course, DJI, iRobot, and all those companies in the United States, they do make use of the supply chains in the Greater Bay Area, okay, for turning their ideas into reality, okay. And of course, the third important breakthrough is the theory, algorithm, software in robotics, become mature. And a group of young robotics researcher students, they adventure out to utilize what they learned from the robotics community, from the textbooks, from the classrooms, and the turning, combining with the supply chains in the Greater Bay Area, and also the demand, for better products, better smart robots from the consumer market. So I think a combination of those 3 or 4 things really made a big difference in the last decade for the robotics community, for the whole consumer community, and also for the whole industry. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. I'm taking notes. I think those are very valuable points. So you mentioned about iRobot, and you mentioned about Colin or Rodi Brooks. Those are MIT, your colleagues when you were there, and also the I think Mark Reber, right? So that's he's the founder of Boston Dynamics, and it's very interesting to compare DJI to those companies. I think they almost started the same. Maybe DJI started even later than those companies. But DJI actually grew much faster. So, and like you said, so this is a supply chain really helps. In Shenzhen really helps the growth of those small companies. So, so that's quite interesting. So now I remember that you said the cost in Shenzhen is 1/10 of the in Bay Area, and the speed is 10 times faster. So now you can see now the labors actually in China grows very fast because everybody want to live a happy life, and we all want to earn more money. And now I heard the news from the news that sometimes the boss of the company even need to try to attract the workers on the street. So it's now maybe 20 years ago it's the opposite, right? So if you go to Shenzhen, you want to beg a boss of the company to join to have a job. Now it's the opposite. Do you see there is a Shenzhen, because of the cost of the land, the cost of the workers, that we are losing some advantage in this case?
I think there are two sides of the coin. Okay, on one side, 10 years ago, when I go to factory, to visit the owners of a factory, asking them to consider adoption of robotics, they probably would kick me out because the labors are so cheap. Why bother to adopt robots in their factory? And 10 years later, this all have changed. They will come to ask me, for advice, suggestions, possibilities, how to adopt robots in their production line. Okay, so the demand for robotics is actually, extremely strong. Okay, so that is a very healthy environment for robotics of all kinds, not just at homes, in the service sectors, in factories, in logistics, in warehouse, everywhere. Okay, so that is the positive side, and also on the other side of the coin, as you just mentioned, yes, it is true. As laborers cost of labors go up, we have and also less and less people want to go into the working in the factory. So that also give us the incentive and also motivation to develop robotics, or production technologies that are more flexible, that can accommodate not just for large quantity production, but also for small quantity production, and also a much bigger variety batches. So that is exactly what we are doing right now. We want to develop flexible production lines, and they also that can serve the need of perhaps one unit or a few units, not just for millions or tens of millions of units. So that is both a challenge and also a opportunity.
Okay, great. It's happy to learn those advances.
Yeah. And also another thing you mentioned that Mark Rabert, Rod Brooks, because I worked at Mark Rabert's lab when I was an undergraduate student. That was probably 1982. Okay, at CMU, and later 1989 at MIT in his lab again. Yeah, and it took so many years, so long for Boston, for robotic technologies for Rebus lab to go off from labs into the market. So that also, a few years ago when Rethink Robotics was at a certain, crisis period, I also met with Rod. I said that, you have to really take advantage of the, opportunities in the Greater Bay Area. But somehow I think the response was a little bit slow. Those situations I encountered a number of times also with adaptive robotics, a few years ago. So I think how robotics, startups, industries in the United States work, collaborate with the, supply chains and with Shenzhen, Greater Bay Area is a very interesting issue. We should not, as I just mentioned, let the political dispute, affect the opportunities of young people from Pittsburgh, from the United States. Yeah.
Thank you for this really interesting comments. So Ms. Gu, I think as Professor Lee mentioned that you see to advance the technology, we not only need PhD students and professors, we also need the industry, and also the support of the blood of the industry. That's actually the capital, right? So I wonder because there's a different rules. I mean, could you tell us what's the difference in the environment of VCs in the US versus in China? So I have very little knowledge about it, but I heard that the rules are slightly different. And LPs, for example, in China, they're thinking about more like a 5+2, while in the US, there's more long-term return. So how that affect the young startups, and how you as the founder of the capital and fund deal with this situation?
Actually, your question is quite professional already, because you are mentioning, the lens of the fund, well, I think the fund, yeah, you did your homework. Yeah. Actually, I think the fundamental mandate of VC industry, either in US or in China, is quite similar, because actually the original root is from the same people. So I would say there are some slight difference, but more similarities in both in VC industry in both countries. First, I think the difference will mainly lie in the sectors we are focusing on. For example, there are some sectors both investors in both countries are quite interested in, for like healthcare, SaaS, a to be business, and also we are both looking into the AI, robotics, and those high tech sectors. There are some slight difference. For example, in China, there is an emergent, semiconductor industry, which a lot of VCs are jumping in because of the special window, especially happening 2 years ago. That's one interesting, sector. I don't see a lot of, VC or investors in Silicon Valley are looking into. And the other one, very interesting sector is consumer in China. Actually, I think China market is fascinating in terms of consumer industry. We have a lot of disruption in distribution channels. We have very different offline dynamic in terms of a lot of grocery new new forms of grocery shopping in offline, and we have I think the largest online e-commerce ecosystem among other countries. And also, we are also upgrading the e-commerce into a next stage, which is live streaming. The live streaming commerce, the total GMV of the live streaming sector will be huge this year, enormous. So I think there are a lot of interesting, new distribution disruption in retail business, and also the new generation of consumers, those Generation Z, we will say, they have a very different, behavior compared to the last few generations. So this is a very interesting sector in China. I don't see any, similarity in other countries happening. So, and also, you just mentioned the difference in terms of the, mindset or the patience of the fund. I think it's more a difference between US dollar fund and RMB dollar fund. Usually the US dollar fund, the LPs, the investor of the funds are from more mature, institutional investors, like, endowments or fund of funds. So usually they will have more, they will guarantee a longer period of, of exit in a fund. But in domestic Chinese market, I think it's still at the early stage of the fund of fund or LPs to grow into a more mature mandate. So they usually require a shorter period of exit. So that actually that actually affects the patience of the investors. But also I think there are interesting changes in Chinese investors. One is we are becoming more operation-driven investors than before, than just purely invest in capital. For example, our fund, ZooCap, the 4 founding partners we all started a startup before we actually started the fund. So that's very interesting. We are not just, pure financial investors. We were entrepreneurs. And in our team, actually, I believe the majority of our team members, even the investors of the team, they started their own business before. I think that actually represents a trend of the Chinese VCs. We want to get more involved or have better, deeper knowledge about startups, not just, we want to invest in, capital and wait. So I think that's very interesting. And the other interesting trend happening here is that we are trying to provide more service or add value service to entrepreneurs than just, focusing on the early stage. For example, our fund, we actually partnered with Boyu Capital, which is one of the largest PE firm in China, and collaboratively, we are managing over $40 billion as the total AUM. And for VC, partnering with the later stage investors guarantees us the access to our portfolio companies when they are entering into a competition that requires intense capital. And actually the portfolios of the PE firm, they are usually the industry titans already. And for a small startup, usually in China, especially if you are doing 2B service, it's very important to build trust between the giant companies at first hand, and to have access to them to sell your service to those to those big companies. I think that's very valuable for VCs to explore how can you add value to those portfolio companies, both in later stage capital, both in access to industry titans, and also in better understanding the business than just invest and wait. So I think these are trends happening in China market. Very interesting.
Great. So yes, I think this is the professional, right? So this is why I'm just trying to pretend to be professional. So, but I have some friends. For example, they want to launch their small business, their startups. So, and some of them also thinking about to launch those in China. and they are looking for funds, right? So VCs to support. But what I heard from them, there's some rumors that because as you mentioned, 70% of the VCs in the U.S. are based supported by the institutes, right? So and then only 30% are individuals. But in China, more than 50% of those monies are supported by the individuals. So they're sometimes worry too much about the company, and they, for example, they will try to push you to IPO, or there is a lot of that could cause some conflict between the VCs and also the management teams of the companies. So in Zoo Fund, in your company, so how you manage this potential conflict?
Well, first, I think
or do you have any conflict up to now?
Actually, we are a brand new fund. We launched the fund one last year, but the four founders, we have experience in the investment sector for over 10 years, each of us. So actually, it's a new fund. And to answer the question, I think first is the fundamental mechanism of the fund, which is how long will your LPs have the exit period. Well, for example, in our fund, it's 10 plus 2, which means starting from last year, you have 12 years for the portfolio companies to grow, and we won't urge you until we have to, which is 12 years later. So I think that's the fundamental mechanism for investors to have to incur any kind of conflict, because they have their LPs fiduciary duty to fulfill. The cases your friends are in, I think it's quite. I won't say it's the majority of the cases, because in China, I think the VC industry we are also evolving. And a lot of very small or non-professional VCs, I think they are leaving the game. They are leaving the battlefield. And for the first tier or top tier VCs, I think first of all, most of the founders or partners, they have both. They have financial investment experience, and some of them have startup experience. So they understand the lifespan, the natural of the nature of the entrepreneur. They understand the it takes time, and also for those funds who have longer history than before, for those funds who have a long history, usually they are very cautious about their reputation as well. So they want to of course, they want every portfolio company to succeed, to IPO or to M&A have huge return. But also they protect their brand name. They want to stay in the ecosystem, and it's very important for them to have a balance, reach a balance between the interest of the fund, which is to have a higher return in shorter period, and also the relationship with the founders. Because I think one other interesting fact is that there are more and more serial entrepreneurs in China, which means even though this time the startup didn't accomplish a huge success, next time maybe this founder will be the next Zhang Yiming or Wang Xin, who are both serial entrepreneurs who failed several times. So I think we Chinese VC investors, we are becoming also more mature in terms of short-term failure, and to keep a good relationship with those potential entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Okay. I want to clarify. It's not the experience of my friend. It's some rumors I heard from them, and thank you for killing those rumors. So next question to Professor Wang again. I think your application, the biorobotics, and all kind of this cool things I've done in your lab actually has a lot of commercialized opportunities. So are you thinking about that? And what's your roadmap to be the next billionaire?
Next billionaire. I'm I think Professor Lee has shared many success stories. I think I can only say that I'm hopefully into one of my own stories, so I can only share a very partial view on the upper hill. So I think there are a number of things that robots are destined to do. I think one of them being explore the outer space. I think we just had the first drone flying literally on Mars. But on the side of doing that, there are also many extreme conditions that humans are not physically capable or comfortable into conquering. Those including marine science or the core of a nuclear reactor, and so to speak. So these kind of areas, I think robots are the perfect catch to try to conquer and replace human beings in doing. And those also means big market and big industry. And we are actively exploring new kind of robots that can actually replace human beings in doing that. And to do that, you do need a very special kind of robots. And I do have a few lists of technical breakthroughs to thank. I think one of them being additive manufacturing, or aka 3D printing. So the time to iterate has been substantially reduced from several months to several days. You can literally make the entire robot line in your own lab without sorting out to any external resources. And also we have the entertainment business to thank. That's a little bit outreached, but you will be amazed when you visit the very rural area, even in the mainland China. And even a fisherman, it will be actively seeking that, can you make a robot for me so I can put on my ship? I mean, 20 years later, that would be unthinkable. And even if today, try to convince the same guy you need a small nuclear reactor on your ship, I don't think you will be having a very easy task, right? So it is the inception of the movies, the books, the Bilibili short videos that everybody thinks having a robot is the time and is kind of cool. So we are doing our fair share of developing systems or solutions that can help those people. And this is one of our goals we are pursuing actively every day.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, as a young professor, I think you also have pressures from other, from teaching, from research, publication papers. So how you can balance between, being entrepreneurship, which is some people say that's not a 50% job, that's a 120% job, right? And how to balance that part of your life and versus your duty as a professor.
That's a good question. I think we have a saying in Sussex that we have a 50% teaching, 50% research, and 50% administrative jobs. That adds up to 150% exactly, as you said. And if you want to do any kind of technical transfer, I think it adds a significant amount of overload to your already heavy camelback. So I think for myself, what I could share would be you need a good team. So you need a group of collaborators, old friends, students, partners that you can start to even try to start. And on the way, you have to build up the trust and sort out for external help as well. And also, as repeatedly mentioned, the capital backup so that you can put things to fruition eventually. But all in all, it is a not easy job, and it does require some superhuman strength and persistence along the way.
Right. So what will be the best way to prepare for that? In your earlier days, if you have a chance to you give some advice to for example 5 years ago yourself, then what kind of advice you want to give?
I think I have an analogy to share, probably. I think I might be old enough that to play the older generation of RPG games. You start out always like level 1. You are barefoot and with a wooden sword. And that's when you started. And if you are challenged the ultimate boss, I think definitely will fail. But then you go through the woods. You kill the spiders and the squirrels. And then you eventually you will level up. And you sell the goods you acquire by killing those small bosses, and you buy better equipment. So eventually, when you level up enough, your heart will be big enough to handle the trickier questions, and that will be the time you can do step up and keep doing that. Then you will arrive wherever your destination might be.
Okay, thank you for the sharing. So, Professor Lee, I think you mentioned about political environment just a few minutes ago. So I think that's also the worry for many scholars and PhDs in the US right now. So I'm very unfortunate. I think that's not good for a human being, but that's the reality. So so what will be the your, because you'll be a mentor for many companies, right? So all of them are international companies. So what will be your advice or suggestions for people who want to work for a company that actually cross the two countries, and especially in the hot area, for example, robotics, artificial intelligence, those areas? What will be their proper way to protect themselves and manage the risk of the particular political risk? I think the previous administration is worse. The current one is a little bit better, but I think there is still some cloud in the sky. Right. So what would be your advice?
Yes, I think this is a very tricky issue, especially robotics and the AI, which are regarded as a national priority for both countries. Mm-hmm. And that very sensitive. And I hope that that also a part that due to lack of understanding, among the policy makers and also politicians, that I think as time goes on, we can probably increase the level of understanding from the academic communities, for example, and when the later generation of people emerge in the political stage, they may have different views, okay, and they may see things differently, as we could tell from the the events over the last couple of 2 years. I think nobody benefits really from this kind of issues, and especially the young entrepreneurs in the area of robotics, consumer electronics, from Silicon Valley, from United States. They were cut off, from traveling to the Greater Bay Area. So we could see that a very small percentage of venture capitals in the States actually went into the area of hardware and robotics. So that is not in the long run. Only big companies, like Apple, were able to do hardware. Young companies, small companies, basically were cut off of their opportunities, to start to work on hardware, especially like robotics. So, I don't think the situation, as it, go on, people will realize, those problems. In short run, you may get away with it, but in the long run, it will develop and accumulate. So we'll see that is not beneficial or even a big, problem for both sides. But I think more for young startups from the States.
Thank you. So yes, we understand the world is not perfect, right? So we have all kinds of obstacles and misunderstandings, and hopefully in the future, the younger generation or the world will realize this issue, and as you said, the next generation of leaders will try to resolve this issue. I think that will benefit for all of us. So next, I want to talk more about the education. I'm as a professor in the university, so I'm very curious about education, especially so-called new engineering education. And I also think this is very important because that's actually, as Professor Lee said, that's the future, right? So that's 10 years later, 20 years later, those people will become the leaders. So I think our job is right now is how to help them to grow. So my first question go to Grace. The Miss School. What will be the difference in your experience? What will be the difference that cultivate in the U.S. in general? I mean, individuals, they're all great variety, but in general, the student actually cultivating in the U.S. and the student actually cultivating in China. So what will be the difference in terms of being an engineer or being entrepreneurs? So, and when people talk to you, would you also, see the different styles in the people who grew up in China or who come back overseas?
Actually, in my daily life, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, as startup founders. So it's pretty easy to tell whether they receive overseas education or they spend most of their academic life in China.
Actually, you're the you're the director of Zenge Fund previously, right? So you used to be, and I think they actually have a lot of people who came from the U.S. and work with them, work with you in Shanghai, right? So what will be I think you're a perfect person for this question. Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah. Well, the first very interesting difference will be the presentation skills. Usually, entrepreneurs or startup founders received overseas education, especially for first-time entrepreneurs. They will have a huge difference in terms of presentation. Those, Western education provide a lot of, training in terms of, presenting your leadership, presenting how to communicate more efficiently with the other side than just focus on yourself. So I think that's one very interesting factor. The other one is I think is the focus on business, which is more likely, received in Western style education than in the mainland style, especially for those undergrads or people who never, left school, first-time entrepreneurs. I think the difference is when you are talking about the product market fit, it's not just about the technical skills or the product features. It's more about how to communicate with the consumers in the market. And I think these are the different training style related to presentation skills in different I think different education style in different cultures. For the Chinese rooted entrepreneurs, I can see they usually have more focus on the solidness of the skill set of the product, especially for the first time founders. So that's very interesting, unique characters you can tell. But for the serial entrepreneurs in China, actually, I think the Chinese rooted entrepreneurs, especially when they left school and they start real business and maybe fail for 1 or 2 times, they become more mature. They have a better understanding of the market and they learn how to communicate, manage up, talk to investors, and try to sell the story, try to do better presentation. So I think the huge difference usually appears when you are first-time founders. But when you are serial entrepreneurs, I think the gap will generally close. And I think it's it doesn't matter if you receive education in U.S. or or other countries or in mainland. It's more important for you to understand the China market if you are trying to if you are trying to tackle the market here and try to build up a real partnership team with both professional and personal trust. I think that's the main. I think that's the most important thing when you are trying to be a successful entrepreneur.
Right. That's great. I think also in Professor Lee's, some previous companies, I think the student benefit from being work with him to understand how to negotiate and how to work with those VCs. I think that actually could be part of our future education of engineering. Engineering not only to do the job, but actually to need to create new product, right? So that's more important and more influential to the society. So we have time's almost up, but I still have some quick questions for Professor Wang and Lee, and we can start to answer questions from the audience. Professor Wang, so I think you're in the Robotics Institute. I have a quick question for you. So you can see since last year, China, we have built about 40 AI schools of AIs all around the country. Okay, so that's almost every major university I know, they have this kind of AI schools. Do you see also we have the need and the necessity to also build robotic schools now as robotics become so popular, something like what CMU have and your institute, and also in the Hong Kong Science and Technology have a particular school for robotics. So what's your opinion?
Yeah, I fully agree. I think robotics is a highly interdisciplinary field of study. I think we do need the common ground for the traditional majors to join forces so that we can cultivate future both leaders and engineers that can fuel the great leap in the whole industry. So I do fully agree that we need more places, more students, more graduates to fuel the whole industry.
Right, I think that's also the trend here as well in the U.S. that CMU built this robotic institute about 30 years ago, or 40 years ago actually. So and then now I think University of Michigan just built their robotic institute this year. Their new buildings with the Ford, and also we have another robotic institute with the University of Washington that also they have launched their robotic institute and hire a lot of CMU professors. So
yeah.
So that's I think that's the trend. Thank you. And also. Okay, thanks. And a question to Professor Lee that actually this is a question from the audience. There is a huge gap between the academia and the industry for robotics. I think that has been for many years. If you look at robotics conference, there's a lot of applications, researchers. I see all kinds of things of robotics: kangaroos, fishes, snakes, a lot of things. But if you look at the industry, we didn't see a big company like Toyota, Ford, or Microsoft, right? So as large as that. So there's some gap between what we are required the PhD to do in the lab, and also after graduation, what they can find a job to work on. So how can you see this challenge, and how we can, as an educator, how we can address this challenge?
Yes, that is a very good question, and over the years, I attend ICRA, okay, and they see many of the startups by students from the robotics community, and they perhaps because of a lack of understanding of the marketplace. So their products are primarily targeted on users from laboratories, from arenas which they are familiar to. So over the years, you do see those companies still, at the size where they started, 10 or 20 years ago. So that is rather unfortunate in a sense that lack of education, in the robotics community for people to understand, the pains, needs from the consumers, from the industries, so that they could not connect, their technology with the vast market. Okay, so that you do see, we have over the last 10 or some years, we do see the change in engineering education. You see the MIT Media Lab, Olin College of Engineering, Stanford D School, Berkeley Jacobs Institute. And the last time talking with the new dean of engineering from CMU, he also mentioned his plans to transform engineering education to allow our students to understand, how to identify opportunities, identify problems, and also integration or integration connection with other areas such as design, with art, with those multidisciplinary areas. So we are waking up, okay, over in general, and there will be many efforts, and also in Hong Kong, in Shenzhen, in Songshanhu, and also universities in China that we are working to making that change, okay, as well. And also we begin to see start entrepreneurs from the robotics community making also bigger impact, not just home robots, not just drones, but also you see that autonomous driving, that is robotics. Also turning around the automotive industry as well. So that is all because of people, technology developed from robotics over the last 30 or 40 years. So I think the whole society is feeling the impact from the the startups and also research from the community. So I think we are making the right move, and hopefully more will come. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's actually why I'm here, because I mainly work on self-driving cars, and also I consider myself as a robotist. And I think actually you're right. So actually, a lot of our robotics students actually were hired by the automotive industry because they need multidisciplinary skills. And I think this the education of robotics is fit perfectly of this need. So another question from the audience I want to ask Ms. Gu is about how to sell our robotics. So the question is, and my understanding is, robotics right now is a product is increasingly integrated with software and hardware, right? So usually it's a small company but do everything, and then sell as a product. Do you see this is a good business model, or there's other alternatives? And how to view this robot as a service might be applied to the products in the future?
I think that's a very good question. Actually, I will use two examples to elaborate to answer the question. Actually, I invested in two companies. I won't say they are robotics companies, but actually they are solving the problems in specific industry. One in furniture, one in fabric industry. And when I dig into the business model of those two companies, I find very interestingly, actually they are implement a lot of robotics into the production line, and also a lot of operation system integration into the whole package as a service to those new factories. So I think to answer the question, it's very important for a robotics as a service company to understand a vertical industry than just thinking about selling the robotics, selling the hardware into a factory or into a company, because the differences between each manufacturing or product line is huge. And for each vertical industry, if you can sell into the top tier companies, they can actually they can actually buy a lot of stuff and has a very high, I would say, actually they continue to buy more when you can prove your integration and improvement in both cost deduction, or you can improve their sales revenue. So I think to answer the question, first, robotics into the industry as a service is not just about the hardware part. You need to understand you need to understand deeply the business, and you need to make a lot of effort integrating those hardware and software and system into the ecosystem to make it effective and to ensure the effectiveness. Actually, I think it's a choice whether you want to make it a general robotic service or a vertical service. I personally prefer the vertical one because I don't believe in the general service can solve all the problems effectively in different industries. For example, furniture and fabric, they are totally different. And if you want to enter into, say, food service, it's another new territory. So that's what I believe in. And because, especially in China market, it's so enormous, it's huge. Even though you can only tackle one specific industry, I think it will make a billion-dollar company or listed company. The market is huge enough.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think thanks, Ms. Gu. I think that the answer is that you need to be professional, right? So you need to make your whatever service you will do. You don't need to have a robot like another human. So that's why we don't hire another human. So we want a robot that can be good at human at certain perspective, and then we can use that for a particular service. Okay, another question is go ahead.
Sorry, just one last sentence. I think if you have you have knowledge and technology in the robotics sector, and there are a lot of problems and opportunities to solve in China market. But you really need to dig into the market and to talk to those business owners, to talk to those enterprise, to understand what's their real problem and how to provide a solution that's feasible for their current stage. You don't have to use all the cutting edge technology. You just need to provide the service or product that's fit for their real needs. And I think that's totally different from think about a solution in your own mind and try to sell it to the market and just to put all the pressure on the sales team. It's not a problem of the sales team. It's a problem of understanding the real problem and use the feasible solutions to fit the market.
Okay, thanks. So next question will be Eric asked that he played with Alex a lot, but found Alex actually doesn't behave as he expected. So the question to Professor Wang is how we can make the robot more human-like. Is there any new technology that can enable this?
Okay, this is a trick question for me because I'm not from the very narrow field, but I think I can share some of my views. I think the matureness of a field requires a combination of several key components. For the case of the loudspeakers that can talk like a human, I think we need certain key aspects from natural language processing, the AI engine background, and also the database, and also the communication service. And we are witnessing the maturity of multiple of those. But the integration of those technical primitives or components do require a certain amount of iteration. And during the time, I think we cannot stop the companies of making money, making profits by developing certain iterations of the products. And there will be some certain mind leaders that did try out new products in the first run, and then the mass product will follow up. I think we are probably witnessing one of those early areas. Then the future iteration will come, and it will be better and better with time. And we, as the mass consumer, can enjoy better and better products.
Okay, great, thanks. So last question actually from me about education is I want to ask Professor Li about this. So I think you are very successful to train and cultivate the entrepreneurs. So I think that's a great contribution. But I think the bigger contribution will be you can create a next Li Zixiang, right? So what will be the way for us to create professors actually influential professors at the age of the PhD. So I think that's because professor is in a very special role. Their contribution is not to make themselves successful, but rather make other people, more and more people successful. So that's kind of the shape of, the creator of the futures, right? So what will be your thoughts about how you can create not only next the CEO or CTO, but actually next mentors in the universities? So you're muted again. Sorry.
Yes, this is a very interesting and also challenging question because over the last few months, I traveled to a few universities in China and also talked to the presidents, professors from universities, at least 3 universities in Hong Kong, okay, to promote, more new engineering education programs. And I was very, I realized the biggest hurdle of doing that is lack of such professors to develop and implement such program, because most of our professors, they went from school to school. They did not have experience with industries, not to mention as startups or even a mentoring role to startups. So those are really challenging issues if professors don't have those kind of exposure and the experience. And they will, how can they guide students into their successful career? So that is also the motivation for us to establish a new school in Shenzhen called the Shenzhen Innovation Academy. And the purpose of this academy is not only to provide fellowship program to students who want to start up companies, but also faculty fellowships for professors who want to be, engaged in developing programs for new engineering education, be a qualified or be a good mentors for students who want to pursue their interest in this direction. So probably later on, I will talk more of this program. Yes.
Okay, great. So I think time's up for this panel, and thank for all our panelists. So we have 2 minutes left. I want each of you could leave about 3 sentences to close this panel. And maybe start from Miss Gu.
Thank you. I think as a VC investor, it will be a thrill for me to see more entrepreneurs coming from the robotics sector. And we are more than willing to support and help the entrepreneurs to succeed in the future.
Okay, and Miss Lee, sorry, Professor Lee. So what's your comments for our audience?
Yes, probably to echo Ms. Gu's comments, it is the best time ever for young robotics engineers to dive into the arena of starting ups. Just act.
Okay, thanks. And Professor Wang.
Yeah, I think I'll echo on that as well. We are in the best times and we are in the worst times. I think the Wonderland is always inside. Try to seize the opportunity and you will be the greatest.
Okay, great. So I just want, for myself, I will echo what Professor Lee said. The cell phone actually brought up this the last boost of robots And now we have more than cell phone. We have cars, we have service robots, we have airplanes, we have all kinds of devices. And I think this is really the time to dive into this area. Plus the AI and the quantum computing and all other new technologies, I think we can together create a better future for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
What an excellent discussion, and thank you so much for your great ideas.